Right. So good afternoon, everyone from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is George Masila. Welcome to this month's edition of KeNIA webinar series. I'll be moderating this specific webinar. And we are seeing people flying in, getting into the webinar. So we'll probably give them 2 more minutes. So we start at exactly 14:36. We really have a lot of people who signed up, and I hope they are going to make it early enough so we get started. Otherwise, our guest for the webinar, Mr. Sam Juguna, who is the CEO and co-founder of Chums, is already here with us. So he'll probably just say hi, but for the benefit of everyone, you can just introduce yourself in the chat section. You can drop a text to say who you are, maybe what you do. And then just some housekeeping rules. I'll kindly request us to keep our microphones on mute and also keep our videos on mute. We'll turn on our videos at the end to take some big group photo. And I will encourage you to wear your smiles when that moment comes. In the meantime, you're welcome to just introduce yourself in the chat section. Thank you. So welcome to everyone joining in. Welcome so much. Karibuni sana to today's webinar. We're getting started in the next 1 minute. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat section. You can just drop your name and maybe the organization you're affiliated with. You might also want to share more about yourself in case you want to. Right, very good. Seeing good representation from the university community, from the dons, and also from students who had already signed up. And we are happy to host you this afternoon. Right. So it looks like our 2 minutes are up, so we can get started with our webinar for the day. And good afternoon once again. My name is George Masila, the comms lead at the Kenya National Innovation Agency. I'll be moderating today's webinar. So just to give you some background about KeNIA for anyone who might be new to this forum. So KeNIA is the Kenya National Innovation Agency. We are a state corporation mandated to manage the national innovation system in Kenya. And we operate within a mandate of working with different stakeholders, from research institutions to universities to TVETs, to the informal sector, the private sector, investors, entrepreneurship support organizations, development partners, media, and everyone in the innovation ecosystem to basically coordinate the efforts of everyone with the intention of supporting as many ideas and research outputs for them to go to market. So on a monthly basis, we do run a webinar series where we bring together different actors, primarily people who are opinion shapers, people who are driving the ecosystem. We also bring on board entrepreneurship support organizations and also investors who are basically offering innovation support opportunities to different startups. And we also host startups who also share their innovation journeys to catalyze the ecosystem, to learn from each other, and also to spotlight what each of us is doing. We also use this as an opportunity to disseminate some of the works that the Innovation Agency is doing. In the past, we've had webinars on technology readiness levels. We've also had other forums where we've hosted different opinion shapers locally and internationally. We've hosted good people from our counterparts in India just to talk about and share their stories of commercialization. We've also held previous conversations with investors to talk about the innovation support opportunities they have and so forth. So today we are privileged to be joined by one Sam Njuguna, who is the CEO and the co-founder of Chums. I know most of us have probably interacted with Chums because we are big savers, and I love the gamification part of it. And I will invite Samuel Njuguna to come on board to introduce himself and to just a little bit talk about Chums. So Sam Njuguna, please, you can come on board. You can turn on your camera and go ahead to tell us a little bit about Chums for anyone who might be hearing it for the first time. Over to you, Sam. Hello, Sam, you could be on mute. Okay, so it looks like Sam might be having a challenge, so I'll be reaching out to him shortly. Otherwise, feel very much welcome to also introduce yourself. Say what you're doing. Okay.
Yes, we've not received your passport.
So, Stephen, you might consider turning off your microphone. So, Sam, I think you're here.
Not photo passport, the passport copy, and business card.
So, Samuel, good. I think Samuel is trying to come on board, might be having an issue, but shortly we will be hearing from Samuel Njuguna. So by raise of hand, if maybe you can just raise your hand or drop that emoji for the hand raised. How many of us are already using Chums? I know a couple of us are big fans of Chums. Stephen is using Chums. Let's see who else is using Chums. A couple of us are actually using Chums, which is really great. So, great to see. Great to see a couple of hands coming up. Yeah. Great. Stephen, Margaret, Martha, Mary, Stephen Otieno, Elizabeth Wasulwa, Velma Chirotich, Evans. All of those are users of Chums, which is really great. Happy to see that we also have customers of Chums in here. So Samuel, if you can hear us. Okay.
Yes, now I can. Now I can.
I
can hear you.
Great, great. Thank you so much. We've just realized that a lot of your customers have also joined this webinar, but I'm seeing the bigger chunk is those who are not your customers. So you have a gospel to preach today. I was just talking about how you need to introduce Chums and talk about what you do before we deep dive into our fireside chat. Over to you.
Super. So, George and the entire KeNIA team, first of all, thanks for the opportunity. I think it's always a great place or a good space to be where people are discussing ideas. So when this happens to be one of them, and I think at KeNIA also what you're doing is supporting people who have ideas all the way to execution, which is part of the innovation journey. Yeah, so as you have heard, my name is Samuel Njuguna. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chums. We define Chums as a goal-based savings and investment app that uses behavioral psychology and gamification to guide users on how and when to save. In a nutshell, you are making savings fun. I think for most people, whenever they hear something to do with savings and say it's on a Friday evening, they always go like, I don't think I need to be talking about money right now. That's a conversation for Monday. But as Chums, basically what we are trying to do is guide people on how they can save even as they participate or as they do things that they like. So for example, if it's on a Friday evening, if you're having your favorite drink, if you've been to a pub, yes, you're doing something fun, but our app reminds you to save some of the money that's sitting in your mobile money. If someone sends you money in your account, let's say it's 150 shillings, the app will remind you to save the 50 shillings on top, and it goes into your savings. So in a nutshell, we make savings interesting. You can do it in an interesting way, in a fun way. It doesn't have to be how you normally perceive saving as something. You always have to plan, you have to think about it on a Monday morning at 10 a.m. and you see it as a very taxing task. But for us, what we're trying to do is it can be fun. Other ways we have made it fun is that you can save even based on your favorite football team. You can say, whenever Arsenal wins, I want the app to tell me to save 500 shillings. So the app will be now your source of information to be telling you when the Arsenal game's coming up. It will tell you the results. And then if Arsenal has won, it will remind you to save. So you do the saving tied to something that you really like. You can also do the converse. If you hate Manchester United, you can say whenever Manchester United loses, you're going to save. And from that, it will tell you when Manchester United has lost, how it has lost, if it's 2-1, and then the app will remind you to save. So that's what we are doing. You can save for personal goals, whether you are saving for using the gamified version, or you can save for vacation, for trips, for insurance, for education. But also we have also a functionality for group goals, where you can save with your friends. Again, the whole idea being when one person deposits, the app is also able to tell the other people, George has deposited, you should also deposit as well. So we have also tried to gamify that. And it has also been a very big use case on our platform. You can find us on Play Store and App Store. So as Chumz, CHUMZ. We're operational in Kenya as Chumz. We also live in Rwanda as Tunzi. And later this year, we are going live in Uganda and Botswana. Yeah, so that's the intro of it. And you can save as low as 5 shillings. So there's no reason for you to say you can't save. We strongly believe the way you handle the small amount is how you build your habit. So even when you handle those big monies, it will also be as a result of the habit you built, even when you're handling your 5 shillings, 10 shillings. So on the app, you can save as low as 5 shillings all the way to 100,000, 150. We have had people who have saved all the way to 3-4 million within the app. But then the whole idea is having that culture of saving. Yeah, so that's the brief of it.
That's really great. And I've just put up a projection of the chumz.io website. So for anyone who is willing to sign up for the first time, you can play games with Chumz as well, as Sam has put it. And it's available on both App Store for the iOS users, and it's also available on Google Play. Is it correct, Sam?
Correct.
Great. So we'll probably deep dive into our fireside discussion, our fireside chat, and anyone who has questions related to Chumz, you can drop them in the chat section, or maybe raise your hand at some point so that we pick you up to probably go on camera. Okay. So Sam, we know your journey didn't start with Chumz, right? And we will probably want to hear from you. Tell us, how did the journey exactly start? Because we know you've come a long way to the point that you've actually set up Chumz, and Chumz is creating some lasting impact. But just give us a flavor of the journey. How has it been? When did you start? How did you start?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because I always tell people when people ask me, when did we start Chumz? The easiest thing is to tell you the registration date on the registration certificate, but Chumz is a result of all the learnings I've had since day one. So in entrepreneurship, we say if you try something and it doesn't work out, you fail forward. What does that mean? It means you don't fail and you are stuck on the same place. You fail, but you progress forward, basically with learnings. So my journey started way back in uni. in college. I was always very curious to know what does it mean, or how does it mean to have friends, work with friends, and start an enterprise. And I think mine was, how I arrived at that decision was in a very radical way. So around my third year of studies, the question was, I was just wondering, what do I do with my life? Do you just go get employed, get married, have kids, and then that's it? Or what other alternative paths are there? And the question was, is that all there is to life? So I just decided to do a bit of research on, because my idea was life should be interesting. I decided to do research on what are the top 3 regrets of people when they are dying. And then that way I can live in reverse, just trying to make sure, when they say you're dying, your life flashes before you. So how do you make that film very interesting? So interesting enough, of the top 3, one of them is whether you spent a lot of time with your family and friends. The second one is whether you followed your heart, things that you believe in. And then I think the third one also has to do basically with impact and people. Of all those, none of them had to do with money, and none had to do with, I wish I worked 100-hour week. It was all about what's true to you, what motivates you, and what good can you do to the society. So having understood that, I was like, what is it that maybe I would regret if I never tried? And for me, one of those things was just trying to build a company. Yeah, so that's where the journey started, the idea started. So by the time I was clearing campus, I had another friend of mine called Sam. We go way back from where I come from, a place called Gatondo. Yeah, so and we thought it's an interesting idea to try and build something. So that's where the journey basically started. And the first venture dealt with distributing airtime, an online platform that could sell airtime for employees. So if you have a company of 10, 20 people, you could log in online and distribute airtime to all those employees. At the same time, you could exchange airtime across network. If you had a lot of Safaricom airtime, you could go to that platform and you send that Safaricom airtime, it exchanges that airtime and sends you Airtel airtime. It was from something we had seen in uni, where a lot of people were having 3 SIM cards. So you'd find one person has a SIM card for Safaricom because of M-Pesa, another SIM card Airtel because of cheap texting plans. And then during that time, Telcom was known as Orange. They had Orange because it had good data plans. But you'd go to the shop, you find you're getting Safaricom airtime, but you couldn't get airtime for scratch cards for Airtel and Orange. So the question was, then how do you allow people to move resources? If I have this Safaricom airtime, is there a way I can have an exchange where I could exchange airtime to any other network, or I could be able to distribute airtime to employees because employees are in different networks? Or if you had a lot of airtime, you could convert it back to cash. So we also introduced something we called airtime for cash, where you could send airtime and it's converted back to money, obvious at a commission. So that was my first journey in campus. After that, got into another entity that was doing what we call credit scoring. So alternative credit scoring, basically using mobile phone data from telcos to try and determine whether someone is credit worthy. Basically what you see Tala and Branch doing, but now we are building that infrastructure for banks, payment companies, microfinances, so that they could lend for people who are unbanked. For that, we did it in Kenya, Uganda, Senegal. I think we had clients in Cameroon. Our biggest markets were in Ethiopia and in Haiti. But this one was very interesting because the way it failed, it's another example of failing forward, was one, in Ethiopia, war broke out between the Tigris and the Oromias. So we realized we couldn't scale the business. All of a sudden, people were not working. And then COVID happened. And then in Haiti, which was also our other big market, we're building a solution for one of the big banks there. the prime minister got assassinated. So it meant nothing would work there. So one day we found ourselves with a very good idea. We couldn't raise more money. And the markets where we had invested heavily are having issues outside our control. So that's how the idea or the business closed. And then from there, as we were doing that, Njogu, Sam, and I had been reading a lot about behavioral psychology. So the question was, is there something we could try and do around savings? Or with the knowledge we had around behavioral psychology, which was talking about how do you get people to build habits, whether it's going to the gym, saving, things. Behavioral psychology is very good, even in things like insurance. When you're talking about sexual health, all those things, they deal with habit change, and behavioral psychology is really key at that. So that's how now we ended up working on this. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, that sounds like a whole journey right there. And I'm glad as a country, we also took something else to Haiti apart from our soldiers, in as much as we experienced whatever challenges we experienced. But if
I
you
always,
could
I always, I always tell people I was in Haiti before our soldiers went there.
that's very nice. So
Yes.
Sam, you've talked about your journey to have started sometime in campus, and I don't know what resources really made the biggest difference when you look back to where you started as a person and also with your let me call with your boy now
Yeah.
turned co-founder and business partner. What could universities do better to support students innovators? Because we've really seen a lot of signups from student innovators who would also maybe want to walk through your path.
So the interesting thing about my journey, when I was, because I started right before graduation, we had cleared syllabus, and the way you clear college, and everyone is very quick to get out of the institution and start life out there. So my question was, could I, because I had the idea of trying to start something. Could I go back to my faculty and ask them whether I could use the resource? And I remember having that conversation because, we went to the lecturer and we told them, look, I would like to still remain in uni, but doing my own things. I want to try and see whether I can start my own venture. And I remember the lecturer was like, what do you mean? You mean while other people are looking for jobs, you want to stick around? Yeah. And I was like, yes, I want to use your internet. I want to operate from here and see what I can come up with. At that time, most people are getting jobs. They are starting their first job. But for me, it was very clear. I wanted to try this path of building something. And I remember the lecturer said, I'll go and consult the faculty. If it's something we find we can accommodate you, yes. So what I did on my end, our campus was in Chiromo. So me and Sam and Jog, that is Jog, we went and took up a house in Keno. So for those who know Keno, it's after you pass Kangemi, Uthiru, you go to Keno, because it was from there at least we could pay 20 or 30 shillings to Chiromo. And then, luckily enough for us, the lecturers agreed to give us space. But the space we were given was not the labs that were being used by the students. It was just an open space, one room which was not being utilized. So we were given that space. There was a table, there was a desk, and there was access to the internet. So it was up to us now to get our laptops or machines. I remember back then we had desktops. So I carried my desktop, and definitely being a school, I made sure it's a safe space. And then I locked in the desktop there. And that's what now I was utilizing. The beauty of being in that space is that one, you get free resources. That's the internet. Two, you have access to the lecturers. So because they're seeing you, And I remember they would be shocked just still seeing me in campus. I'm still going to the mess or to the shop, having the usual. I've graduated. It's not that I have any receipt. I'm not doing any masters. I'm I'm making use of the resources, and then I have my friend there to go also accompanying me. But it was a beautiful time because it allows you to be very lean. You have access to the lecturers. The other thing that was very interesting was when you're building and you're reaching out to partners, we could make use of the campus address. I think one of the things that's very well you might take for granted is the beauty of using, a well-known institution as your reference point, which also meant when people see you're still in an institution, they are willing to support you. So that's one of the things I actually learned. You might take it lightly, but it's really powerful. The other thing was definitely with agreed access, you could still access some of the libraries. I remember during our time, as we were building a tech solution, one of the things that was very clear was one of our lecturers had donated a book in marketing and sales. And out of the many technical books, there was this very thick book which was about marketing and sales. And I got interested in that, and I thought if this lecturer whose background is in IT has decided to donate a book in marketing and sales, it says a lot. So I could go there and access the books. So that was very powerful. And also not forgetting, it allowed me still to be in Nairobi, coming from Gatondo. Otherwise, huko ningerudi kulima shamba as I wait to look for a job. So it was very convenient for us to commute in between there, get the resources, and also the ideas we were working on. We could go to town and meet potential clients. The other thing that you find very interesting is access to the lecturers, because they are still also the key decision makers. You find they sit in boards. They have access to all these other potential companies would like to work with or offer solutions to. So you also made use of that. And the last and not the least, one of the key things is being in the university also meant, we were surrounded by very smart people. The students, so would make use of, if the student who's very good in programming or in sales, we had access to the student. If not, we could always ask the lecturers, whom can we engage in the faculty that you think we can work with, either to support us, or when they are on holiday, we can have them as an intern. So again, that's something that was very powerful. I always say during that time, you have a very high concentration of very, very smart people. And now you make use of that being in that space.
Okay, interesting. So when I was going through the people who had signed up for this webinar, I realized a couple of them had the domain .ac.ke. Most of them are probably affiliated to specific institutions, maybe could be lecturers or people who coordinate entrepreneurship or innovation in the universities. And you've mentioned how the infrastructure was like when you are getting started from campus. Now, some people here are here to learn and understand what could be done better. What can our universities do to make sure that entrepreneurship becomes an option after graduation?
I think for us, one of the beauty of when I requested to use that space, it eventually became a fully fledged incubation hub. So that's what you have, the C4D lab at the University of Nairobi. So eventually, the faculty saw the need for the students who are very keen on building something, they could get a space where they utilize those resources. So eventually, it ended up being a fully fledged space where now it started attracting even, external financiers and people who are willing to support the whole ecosystem. If it's free credits for whatever you're developing, whether it's hosting services, you could access that because now it has a whole structure in itself. If it's introduction, say, to certain thought leaders in the market, now it was comfortable to say you're coming from an innovation hub based off the University of Nairobi. So the bigger picture in terms of what could be done differently, I think one, from my experience, is having a multidisciplinary approach to the people you support. And that was very clear with us. So initially we started as, people who are very heavy on the technical aspects, but then you realize technical can only get you so far. You need people who can do sales, marketing, people who are able to do positioning for the product, and people who are generally curious and can be able to fit in various aspects that you need to fix for the business. So for that, one is allowing the students you have in your faculty, when they go out there, if they are looking at innovation doesn't happen in isolation. It will never operate because you are in, say, you're doing biochem. Yes, the people who will come up with a solution, but you also need people who understand supply chains. The people who need marketing and sales. So if there's a way that there could be a way for people to have that multidisciplinary approach where they all meet and whatever you are building, people see it from different perspectives. That's one. I think the one thing I've realized is for most of the faculties, they operate in silos. You hardly get to mix with people of other departments. Yet when it comes to innovation, you work as a group. The other one has to do with being very deliberate about where you create this ecosystem. If it's something that pertains to the empowerment of these individuals, whether it's the space, access to basic things such as, Wi-Fi, having cleared the campus, I couldn't afford to pay for that. And even the house we were staying in Keno, it was a couple of friends, and then would split the rent. So Wi-Fi becomes a very expensive resource if you're paying on your own. So just having that to do your research, there are those basic necessities for you to build a business, so that you
Just checking if we lost some.
Yeah, I think we did.
Okay. Let's see if we can fix this. So let me just drop a chat to some. Okay, so I should be coming back. Now, I think one of the key things that I'm picking up this afternoon is the fact that there is actually that possibility for our universities to support young innovators, especially the ones that are coming from our institutions of higher learning, specifically if the lecturers, the dons, the faculty are more willing to handhold and just to tolerate each other, specifically around the bit of you don't have to chase me away if I'm a student. You could see how I can benefit. Now, the problem is I would maybe want to hear from the universities in the room as Sam comes back, if we actually have mechanisms for the universities to benefit from the students, because you can clearly tell that students can easily benefit from the university infrastructure, from benefits, mentorship from the lecturers. But have we also put up all the necessary things to ensure that our universities also benefit from these innovators, or do we just breed them and incubate them and then they disappear and we end up saying, oh, this was our student, look at how they are doing well, they are raising millions and millions of money. So we'll probably want to hear from a couple of our friends and colleagues from the academia side. I mean, happy to have anyone who is willing to go on camera just to speak to that. You could tell us the case in your university as we bring back some. Martha Murugi, do you want to comment? I see your hand is up, and Margaret Mwangi and Nicole as well. Just to confirm if you want to say something. Okay. Oh, Hand dropped quick fast. Okay, so in case you have a comment or question, you can just come on board so that we pick it up in advance as Sam comes back. Sam is here. Good. So Sam, we're just trying to buy some time as you come back, but we'll be picking up questions thereafter. So you can proceed, Sam. Oopsie, looks like we lost Sam again. Someone was attempting to speak. Maybe you can go ahead as Sam comes back. Was it Kenny Locker? Yes, please.
Yes. Can you hear me and can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is KeNIA Locker from Kenyatta University. I'm very impressed with what Sam has presented. Topic comes on again. But of course, as a university, there are things that we are doing. A lot has evolved from the time Sam was in college. I didn't get exactly when and right now. So what's happening in KU is that, well, we really realized that we have a lot of talent within the university that can really benefit the university. And we also saw it necessary to find ways through which you can support this talent that we have. So what we have, like in Kenyatta University, for instance, we have Chandaria Business Incubation and Innovation and Incubation Center, which is meant basically to help students who have innovative ideas and how to help them build it from ideation to enable them understand how to navigate around it and, of course, eventually come out and contribute to the society. So through Chandaria Business Innovation and Incubation Center, where I'm currently serving as the acting director, we identify these students and also people from the society who have innovative ideas. And through that, we give them the skills, the tools to help them go around how to improve on the ideas, how to protect it through the IP and other aspects, and how to look at the aspect of technology transfer, and also find a way through which you're able to link them up with the industry and make them really support the ideas and make them be realized. So there are a number of ways through which you can benefit from this. For instance, when the students come up with these ideas through the intellectual property, we realize that if they're able to work on this IP, then it contributes to the university's visualization in terms of that. And some of these ideas, if they're able to translate into commercializable ideas or products or solutions, then it's one way through which the university can really benefit from that. So it's a two-way approach. First, you're able to tap into the capacity that we have in the university, considering it cuts across all fields. You realize medicine is there, engineering is there, social sciences are there. All these programs with the university, there are talent which can contribute to innovation, to research. And if you tap into all those brains which are still very young, very new, and they are ready to work, then it's actually very rich on how the university can benefit. So you just need to look at it and see that you provide the facilities and an environment within which they will benefit from that. So that's what I can contribute for now, but I think going forward, we can get much more on how we can contribute to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, and for just spotlighting what KU does. And I think many more universities are beginning to follow the same path. And we are hoping that by the time we are getting to 5 years down the line, we'll be talking of a movement where both the students and the universities also benefit from these specific interventions around innovation commercialization. So Sam, you are just finalizing on your point.
Yeah.
Would you want to go ahead?
Yes. Yeah. So the other point I wanted to share was, I think one of the things I also picked was whenever students do projects in school, I think the faculty or the school they are in is always very big on utilizing the technical aspects of that subject. So if it's, for example, if it's computer science, they are very big on the algorithms you're using, the foundational aspects of computer science. And then that's where it ends. The grading, your pass marks all depend on how well you utilize that. But just the same way you had points on how you present the work and also what you have presented. One other thing that I've always been suggesting is you can also have someone from maybe business world who comes and asks, how can you commercialize this? Doesn't have to be part of the grading, but it helps in viewing the solution also from a commercial angle. Or it can also be a way to trigger thinking on how you can commercialize or thinking like an entrepreneur. And this can be still on the current projects that are being done by students, but injecting that consideration that if this was to be a business, how could I position it? What's unique about it? And how would it scale beyond just offering something that caters to the requirements of a certain faculty or unit. So that's the other consideration I had. And then the other thing I would say is connection to industry experts. So one of the things we have also seen is when you're in school, you are very siloed with school materials. But if there's a way you can also bring in people of different fields, people who are out there, people who are running businesses, or people who have seen ideas in that field commercialized, and they come and talk to the students. They can be either when you're grading the projects or as a discussion on the side on how certain projects in certain fields are commercialized. How does that look like? That's also a consideration. The last one I also wanted to share, and this is something I saw happening at the University of Nairobi, is the C4D lab where I started. I think since last year, they managed to partner with an entity that was willing to pay for attachments when students get attached in startups. So instead of just the normal industry attachment, the entity would come and say, if any of your student gets attached in a startup, a company that's trying to build something, we are going to pay for, for their transport money, their lunch money. Again, it's a small token, but then again, it incentivizes the students to think about attachment, not just in big companies, but also in startups where they pick up these skills. So that allows now that bridge between what the student has been learning in university and the industry, but not just the industry, in a space where people are building solutions. And now that's also another way to spark an idea of, again, how to start considering building your own thing or innovating your own thing as another alternative path to employment. Back to you, George.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. I think that's very insightful. And I think we are taking notes for those of us who are supposed to be taking notes in regards to that. Now, when you were talking earlier on, you mentioned that Chums is not your very first startup that you build. You've done others before, but you've had, should I call them failures, or sometimes luck is not on your side. For example, the case of Haiti and a couple of others. But in your own experience as an entrepreneur, okay, how would you say you've benefited from the failures that you've had? Because sometimes we think everything has to succeed, but sometimes that is never the case. So which experience in particular, if you were to single out one thing that really shaped your journey as an entrepreneur, which one would it be?
Yeah, so there's a concept I learned from one of my favorite authors. It's called anti-fragility. And the concept talks about, one of the things he asks when you start the book is, what's the opposite of fragility? So if a glass is fragile, what's the opposite of it? I think most people think the opposite is something that is strong or something that cannot break. But the author argues the opposite of fragility is anti-fragility. Basically, something that gets strong with impact. So instead of a glass breaking, something that's anti-fragile would get strong when it falls down. And that's something that's very common in nature. So for example, what is vaccination? Vaccination is a form of anti-fragility because you introduce a weak form of the agent that causes the disease or the ailment, and then your body doesn't just kill it, it becomes stronger. It is anti-fragile. Another example is when you go to the gym, when you exercise. You know, when you exercise, what happens? Your muscles start to tear, but in order to cover for those tearing, they overcompensate. So you end up being stronger. So you have another example of anti-fragility. So the other example in this context of anti-fragility is when you try and build something. The failures that you get are not just failures, and that's where it ends. But now what happens is you come off better off because of those failures. So you learn ways of how not to do something, and then it directs you on what is more likely to work. You try something, it fails, and then you also learn something out of that. So ideally, you find even most people who have run successful ventures, that's usually like their third or their fourth. And interesting enough, that usually takes, like in our case, by the time we were doing Chums, it was an average of around, I would say, 8 years, 9 years. So, and if you look at what they call the 10,000 hour work, they say for you to be an expert, you have to do 10,000 hours of deliberate practice or deliberate focus on something. It usually translates to around 8 to 10 years. So going back to your question, what is it that I have learned? One is that you, in building, it's also another way of anti-fragility. If something doesn't work, you fail forward, which means, yes, you have failed, but you have failed in a progressive way. You are a step ahead than someone who never tried. And that's, it's part of the game, allows you to grow a thick skin, see what works. And from that, you also become reflective and see what you could have done better. So yeah, it's, I would say in a nutshell, that concept of anti-fragility covers what it means to build.
Okay, and now that we have Chums here, you've talked about you being operational in Rwanda.
Yeah.
Maybe for mature startups, people who are probably in their growth stage are trying to get into new markets, to cross the borders. But from your experience, what is the main challenge that maybe you've experienced scaling Chums across the borders? And how is the environment like in terms of regulation? How is the environment like between Kenya? I know for you it's a little bit interesting because you are regulated by, is it the what? You're
Capital
regulated
Markets
by
Authority, CMA.
Yes, you're regulated by CMA, right? But
Yeah.
how is the regulatory environment out there? Maybe from your experience or from other people who've also tried to scale into the similar markets that you've used to scale Chums.
Yeah. So one, I think there are two questions. One, as you are scaling, what problems do you face, and then scaling in different markets. I think the one of the things you realize is appetite for learning. I think that's the only line of defense you have when you are building. So you have to be very curious. When you're starting, you start from your circle of competence, things you are familiar with. But as the venture grows, you realize you start going into spaces that you never thought you would need to engage in, focus, or learn. So, for example, right now, we have over 500,000 registered users on the app in Kenya. In Rwanda, we have over 20,000. So what you deal with are scaling issues on technical. So all those things you are reading about, how do you scale a technical product? That becomes part of the game. How do you hire? Because at that point, you are hiring left, right, and center. So you start looking at how do you hire the right people? How do you look at people who have the right attitude? How do you determine that this person is someone who can grow with the organization? So all those become a reality. And it also now cuts across as you're scaling, because in other markets, you're also looking at how can you have people from different markets, how can you hire right? So in a case in point, like right now, one of the things I've been learning the most is on how to hire the right people. What is the role of HR? And at the end of the day, you're also aware you can't delegate what you don't understand. So you're also very keen to ensure by the time you're bringing in on board someone to do that HR function, you really understand what success looks like and what failure looks like, right? In terms of scaling in other markets, for a regulated product, definitely you have to understand what it means to be regulated in different markets. How do things operate? There are other soft skills like you find there are other markets where for you to get partnerships, relationships are very strong in some markets. Other markets are very capitalistic. It's very incentivized on what is it in for us? What do we gain? And then from there, you have an understanding. So for the regulation, like in Kenya, yes, as you have mentioned, we are regulated by CMA. Also in Rwanda, in Uganda, we have to get approvals from both Bank of Uganda and CMA. So it's very much similar in terms of the requirements on the things that you fill out, but there's the key differentiator you find is on how you approach the market. That's where you see major differences. But on regulation, they're usually basically the same. They need people who are upright. They need you to meet certain conditions. They need you to look after the customers first. How are you taking care of them? How are you handling their data? But then when it comes to the side of marketing, that's where things differ. Because each market, there's a way you approach the market, the way you present your product, different from any other market. Yeah.
Okay, I saw Jessica Ryuki commented something to do with regulation. I think she almost saw that a question was coming around that. And she said you comment something on regulation, CHUMS/NABO relationship. I don't know who is NABO, but you might understand better.
NABO is the fund manager who holds the funds that people invest. So he's the one who goes ahead and invests. We are what is known as an intermediary service provider. So basically, our work is to provide very good tech that makes people, have that habit of saving. And then on the back, we work with licensed financial institutions like banks, fund managers who now hold the money. So, for example, in Kenya, we work with NABO Capital.
Okay.
Yeah, and then and now also going to work with ABSA in a market like Rwanda. We are working with Bank of Kigali, the investment arm called BK Capital. So, and we also licensed or authorized to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so I see our time is running out, and I'll probably want to pick a few questions from the audience. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. You can drop a message in the chat as well, so that we tackle it. And maybe as that happens, not as a parting shot, but if today you are to give a message to any student out there, we know some of them are still on holiday, maybe may not have made it to this webinar, but we'll be sending the link for people to catch up for those who didn't get a chance to join. But if you are to give one message to any student, be it someone who is in the university or a college at TVET, and you want to encourage them to continue pursuing what they are doing, because at some point it might yield, or even if it fails at some point, it should be a good learning point for them. And later in life, they could carve their own path. If you are to send out that strong, punchy message, what would it be?
I would tell them, trying your own thing is the best thing that can ever happen to you. If it works, very beautiful. It's a big plus. If it doesn't operate, you learn a new skill. In fact, you become very highly employable, because also employers are looking for people who are self-driven and can do their own thing. And then the other thing is, at the end of it, you come out with new skill that even later on, if you want to go back and try and come up with something, you have a foundation to stand on. So go forward, try it out. I always tell people when they're trying to start their own ventures, they think one of the biggest stumbling block is raising capital. But the funny thing is, in our context, it's usually culture. So you try and start a company and your relatives are asking you, why aren't you looking for a job? You are spending a lot of time in your room doing nothing, just on your machine. Also to make people aware that cultural barriers are something that are there. In my case, it was very huge. literally at some point I couldn't go home for like 7 months because I was being asked, why aren't you looking for a job? You're just in Nairobi. Unafanya nini huko? So yeah, but at the same time I knew what I wanted to do. So I decided to push forward and focus on building what I believed in. So my word of advice is, if it's something you are willing to do, it's a hard path, that's the reality, but it's one of the most fulfilling paths you'll ever have. It will also allow you to have interesting stories, on how to try these things and the experiences you have. So it's a wonderful space to be in. Yeah, if you
Okay.
want to do that, don't deny yourself a chance.
Ah, great, great. You almost started writing a book midway, but yeah, some
Ni
I'm
passion,
picking
ni
a couple.
passion.
Ni passion. So I'm picking a couple of questions here, and
Yeah.
someone asks, how do you know when to pivot, persevere, or let go of an idea?
Yeah, so when to pivot. So I always advise people, one of the key skills when you're trying to build, you should pick, or if you don't have, one of the key people you should have is the ability to sell. Because when you're selling, at the end of the day, whatever you're building needs to be sold. And selling is a factor of interacting with other people. So the true answer to when to pivot is usually your customers. Not the theory that you have in your head, not you sitting on a desk trying to figure out whether you need to change to a new product. They usually say, there's a book that I like, one called Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And then there's a manual that guides you on practical examples called Running Lean by Ash Maruya, Running Lean. So in that book, it says you just need to talk to an average around 8 people that you think are potential customers. It means you have to do good work in trying to figure out who's a potential customer. And then once you zero in on them, have a sit down with them and ask them questions pertaining what you're building. So for example, I have this product. If I sold it to you for 400 shillings, are you willing to buy? Don't ask them whether they would be willing to pay. Everyone says they want something for free. So ask them, if I'm selling 400, because you also have to consider how much you're willing to sell the product for it to make something, to be sustainable. So you'd go and be something like, hi, George, I have this product. I'm selling it for 400 shillings. Are you willing to buy? It's one thing for George just to say, I think it's a nice suggestion. It's another thing for him to say, can I get it right now? When they say right now, there's something there. The other thing is when they say, not today, maybe tomorrow. The body language, the intonation tells you a lot about what you're building. And that's why I always advocate, like for us, even when we are doing tunes, one of the things we'll do is make sure we have a sit down with potential customers. The other thing right now we are doing is we are working on tunes for kids. And we reached out to a number of parents across the country. And we literally traveled and sat down with them just to find out what is exciting for them. Body language, they say 80% of communication is nonverbal. If someone is excited about something, you tell it from their eyes and how they, hapa utajua hapa ndipo, this is what they want. It's another thing when they say, yes, it's a good thing. So that body language tells you that. If you find there's no connection for the product, then you might consider pivoting or seeing what you need to add for it to have that punch. The other thing about now sitting down with the customers, you can also tell exactly in the sphere of whatever you're building, what really excites them, maybe in a number of offerings in that product.
Okay, so another question here, that's well answered. So someone asks, how are you able to validate your market and what was your go-to-market approach?
Yeah, so ours was just talking to a number of customers. The funny thing is when we started building tunes, most people think we started with an app. No, we started with a Google Sheet. So, and I think we still have those Google Sheets. So we wrote down the problem and sent it to our friends. We asked, so do you have this problem and how do you solve it around savings? And most people would say, yes, I still struggle with this. Right now, what I do is when I receive money, the first thing I do is put it in a bank account, put it in a physical piggy bank that's under my bed, you know. And then we extended the research to friends of our friends, basically people who we don't know. And at this point, you're looking at maybe 20 people. Yeah, and then eventually we suggested what, again, to the people we were researching with, what do you think if we gave you a solution whereby whenever you are about to have a drink, we remind you to save? And people are like, this is interesting. This is very interesting. I think this is something I can use. Unataka kuniambia kabla nikunywe, inaniambia pia ikunywe pia yake. Yes. That's the whole idea. And now people would resonate. And now with that, you're able to tell, I think there's something here. We can now move to the next stage of building a prototype. So even the way you interact with these people, just on a Excel and asking them questions, and seeing what works, what resonates with them, also guides you on where to operate. In terms of go to market, so after we did now the first app, the first thing definitely was sharing with friends to see how they resonate. And then from there now we would post it in groups just to see the reaction. In it we had created a shareable link so that people, if they like the product, they could share with their friends. And that's how now it caught on. So yeah, from the onset, it wasn't like a very grandiose approach on how we are going to hit the market. It was more of just trying and identify whether it resonates with the problem you're trying to solve. And then from there, gradually took off.
Okay, interesting model. So B. Mushiri asks, I think this is directed to Ask KeNIA. So B. Mushiri asks if we know any more incubation programs to facilitate research and translate it into market-ready solutions, or is this agency enough for that? Okay, interesting. So KeNIA is not enough for all the innovation, incubation, and acceleration that we might have. We have multiple incubation programs run by different people, from the private sector to university-based innovation programs to also some that are supported by development organizations. So if you check out ASEC, for example, ASEC is the Association of Startup and SMEs Enablers of Kenya. We have over 60 ESOs that offer different innovation support programs. If you look at countrywide innovation hubs, for example, you have a mix of different innovation hubs across the country that offer these innovation support programs. There are other innovation hubs that are based in universities. For example, for UON, you've heard about C4D Lab. There is Chandaria Innovation Incubation Center at KU. There is one in JKUAT. There's another one in Descartes. Riara University is also supporting innovations big time. ZTech also has one. I mean, most of them are members of these two associations. So then I would encourage you to go check out the associations. I'll probably drop the name ASEC. So B. Mushiri, you can check out ASEC. You could also check Countrywide Innovation Hub. Okay. You could also check ANDE. ANDE is Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. So you could also check that out. They offer multiple support programs. You can also check out kenya.go.ke for additional programs that we have and support innovators like you and many others. Now, probably the last question before we turn on our cameras for a quick group photo. Someone asks, when building a startup, what is the best approach if the workload becomes too much for one person, but there isn't enough capital to hire a team and serve clients efficiently? So I think that's to you, Sam. And we could tie it to what could you advise on transitioning on a new product to the market?
I think if it's the workload is too much, one is to identify what really matters at that point. Because for a customer, you find, they only care about a product and maybe a certain aspect of the product. So it's to really break down what's the core value the customer is getting from the product. I always tell people, when you're building, you need to identify what you need to identify at least 2 or 3 hypotheses that need to be true for that product to work. And then the rest becomes, good to have, but not necessary. For example, I can give you an example. When you're building a car, what are the true hypotheses that need to be there for a car to function or for a customer to buy a car? One, we can say the engine needs to run, right? If the engine is not running, you don't have a car. So hypothesis number 1, we can build an engine that runs. Then number 2, the customer can be able to drive the car and fuel the car. I think that's hypothesis number 2. So all the other things, does the car need to be blue, red, have very bright lights? Those are good to have. But the hypothesis for your product to work, you only pick about 2 or 3 maximum. For example, for Chums, what are the hypotheses that needed to be there for it to work? 1, saving is going to be interesting and we're going to make it relatable for the user that they can put money there. Number 2, obvious with money, trust is a huge element. Is that eventually we are going to build trust, or the positioning of the product is in such a way that they can trust putting money there. And then 3, it would be, we are going to enable people to build a habit by encouraging them to save through gamification. Again, whether the app is pink, green, those are good to have. Whether it's sitting on a very huge server, managing 1 million transactions from day 1, again, it's neither here nor there at that point. So the question is, at that point, what is it that you need to do for you to meet the client demand at that point? And then that now reduces all the other things that you have in mind. What was the other rider to that question? I know it was about huge tasks. Oh yeah, when you can't hire. The other thing, now, because at that point you can't hire and you can't raise capital, that's where you bring in a team. It's a teamwork. So you set up a company, they're your co-founders, make sure you vet them very well. You can also build something called a vesting schedule, whereby you agree, George is going to join me, but we are not going to split shares right now. We need to see his commitment for the first 1 year. If he proves he's committed, then from year 2, we can start allocating shares bit by bit until maybe by year 3, that's when everyone can have a full share ownership or full stake. It's called a vesting schedule. So the whole idea of working as a team and having a company as a team is that they own shares whose promise is a future payoff when the product works. And shareholding can be people who are bringing in money for you to hire. If not people who are doing that, people who are bringing in different skills that you need to run the enterprise. I think there was a second question. The second question was on what?
The second question was, what could you advise on transitioning on a new product to the market?
Yeah, so transitioning, there are key factors I would look at here. Is it the same customer segment or it's a different customer segment? If it's same, make sure you can go back to your old customers, ask whether what you are building resonates, because you already have their data. There are people you can reach out to. They have already built rapport with you because you had another product. So it becomes a very easy reference point for your learning. If it's a new product, the question is, which segment is it tackling? Can I find potential clients for this? The first thing is have a sit down with them. Try and figure out whether what you are building resonates. Otherwise, you'll be doing what we call spray and pray. You spray your product to everyone and then you pray, at least to ili ama watatu, they align, which is a very costly affair and you don't have that money to do all that.
Okay, looks like people don't want really to have this conversation end. So I'll just do one last one from Mother. So she says that she co-founded Salamander Tech last year after campus. It's an open source community creating awareness around open source and pushing members to contribute to open source. And currently they have managed to get to co-brand tracks with 2 other startups to help them open source projects and end to end. Now, they are currently in a plateau on whether to continue as a community or for profit, especially in open source, because it's their area of expertise. And she says lazima pesa, which is kichele. Now, in your opinion, in your view on open source, especially in Kenya, and where, I mean, she's asking in your opinion or in your view on open source, especially in Kenya, where can they start with regards to commercializing projects? They have to reach to graduates, to students, and to experts in tech too, but they would like to benefit monetarily. So how would you advise them?
I think I have two answers there. One is yeah, you have to look at it from the point of sustainability. So if there are people who are willing to support what you have currently, and you continue with building the open source without any angle around profit making, that's an angle. There are products that do that, and we have seen it working. The other one on profitability, one of the things you can borrow from are the likes of Odoo and Metabase. So there are things we call copyright and copyleft. So there are solutions whereby they are free if you're using it as an individual. But if an enterprise wants to use it for commercial purposes, you pay for it, right? So now the question there becomes, at what level do you want to provide an open source solution? The other angle, the approach around Metabase. Metabase is a reporting tool. It's free, but there's an enterprise version which has support. So again, it all depends on how you spin the product. You can see for things like Odoo, it's one of the biggest CRMs we have in the market globally. It's open source, but also very big on profit making in terms of when you're running a commercial entity and you need support for it. So that's the angle around it. On the other end, you can always see of whatever you have built as open source or supporting, is there one that you can decide to be fully commercial, and then it can support your other ventures which are purely open source. So that's the other thing. In terms of the operation, and then we have obvious like the Linux model whereby it's open source, but big companies that benefit from it, the likes of Google, Microsoft, they're always willing to give a certain percentage of their earnings for this entity that's offering an open source solution, which is supporting their commercial work.
Okay, that's good. And maybe last one from my side. Are you currently fundraising? Are you looking for investment? Anything? Is there an appropriate time to do so for startups? What would you advise?
So usually an appropriate time, they say the best time to raise money is when you don't really need it. That way you're not very desperate, which means, you have time to wait. It's like dating. When you're very desperate for relationship is the worst time to be in relationship. So, but when you are in a position where you can pick and choose, you have flexibility. So they say the best time to raise money is when you don't need it. The worst time to raise money is when you really need it. Because during that time, people can take advantage of you. Any deal is a good deal to you, and you might not actually choose the right deal or do the right due diligence, even on the person who's giving you money or where the money has come from. So fundraising, it depends. In my case, when we were building the credit scoring company, I had actually raised some money. That comes with its weight, because you always have to do reporting. There are people who you're answerable to. On the side of Tunes, we decided to focus largely on growing with our own revenue. So, but obvious, that doesn't rule out also fundraising. It's part of the game. But yeah, so if you're growing with your own revenue, it's a slow process. Money has to get to a certain point for you to unlock other things But on the other hand, you have your freedom. On the other side, on the fundraising, you get to grow fast, but at the same time, it has its own pros and cons, which is you also get to be answerable to someone and you'll have to be reporting to them. So, and you also have to do due diligence on who's this giving you money. Do they understand the business we are in? Will they bring networks so that you can grow? We call them smart money and dumb money. So smart money is money that comes with networks. They understand the space you are in. They'll guide you. Dumb money is just someone who gives you money. That's where it ends. But at the end of the day, you'll still be answerable to them. So those are things you need to wait.
Okay, so to everyone in the room and is looking at fundraising, maybe the most important thing you need to ask yourself is whether you want to be answerable to someone or you want to be flying solo. Okay, so thank you so much to everyone who joined this conversation. There's 60 plus of you, which is amazing. The numbers are almost very consistent, and I know some people might not want this to end, but we have to come to an end. So Karaya Muni says, great session, Sam, and congratulations on the milestone you have made as Chums. We have a similar product to Chums. Oh, your competitor. Are you afraid of competition, or is the market big enough for all of you?
I think competition is healthy.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I think the opposite of competition is being monopolistic.
Yes.
And the reason why we are doing what we are doing is because we also believe in a market that allows competition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, you can turn on your cameras for a quick group photo. We make it quick, and thank you so much for joining this webinar this afternoon. So we won't judge you if you look like you're wearing a short and a promotional t-shirt somewhere, especially if it's from Chums. But yeah, you can go ahead and turn on your cameras. So we normally hold these webinars on a monthly basis. And sometimes we also invite people who feel like have interesting stories to share. You probably think you're an opinion shaper. You'd want to feature on our webinars. So you can write to us through the email address that I'm dropping right now, which is comms@kenya.go.ke. And then we'll be sure to pick up a conversation. So you can just write an email and say that you'd want to feature as a guest, probably want to spotlight your startup, you want to spotlight the work you do in supporting innovators, or you just think you're a great opinion shaper and you can offer thought leadership in the innovation ecosystem. Happy to host you. So you can wear your smiles, ladies and gentlemen. Right? And then look at the camera. So in 3, 2, 1. Good. Looks like we have a lot of STs, JMs, KSEs, JWs in terms of abbreviations, but we also got a chance to capture a few faces. Thank you so much, and wishing you a nice afternoon, and see you next time. We'll be sharing this recording for you to look at in case you might have missed something. And you could also share it with your friends. It's going to be uploaded on our YouTube channel as well. So have a good afternoon. My name is George Masila. See you next time.
Okay, thanks.
And thank you so much, Sam, for coming, and wishing you a nice afternoon. Say hi to the team.
Okay, super.
Thanks,
Say hi
Sam and
to the
George.
team as
Bye-bye.
well. Bye-bye.
Bye.